Alright guys, welcome back for another video on HAIKYU Fly High, and today we're going to talk about the 3 upcoming SSR memory that will be releasing alongside with the characters tomorrow. Now, vast majority of the time you should really just be saving up for the UR with SP memories because they just provide much better value for money. And in case you're wondering which one do you actually want to save up for, I already created a tier list in the past ranking all of the future memories, okay? So you can definitely just go there and check out that video. However, in that video, I did also mention that if you actually want to be a bit more budget friendly rather than going for full URs, there are actually going to be some good SSR choices. And one of them is actually going to be featured this time around. And that's kind of what I do want to bring it to your attention. And this one is actually going to be very, very interesting, especially if you want to be super budget. This one is going to be very, very good because it's for the setter position. Vast majority of the time in this game, you actually want to go for multiple setter memories because you will be having multiple setters, and a lot of those memories are not transferable. However, this one is universal, and therefore, if you are on a budget and you don't want to go for loads of different UR and SP memories or for the setter position, you can actually just use this one and try to get by for all of the different setters you will be getting, okay? But that's kind of why I do actually want to make this point very clear. Even though this is an SSR memory, definitely do not ignore it. It can actually be a very, very good budget alternative if you do not plan to summon for too many UR or SP memories, okay? So I just want to point that out. But before actually talking about this in depth, let's go through the other two memories as well and give them, their time to shine. So the other two memory we'll be getting is going to be the one for Yamagata and also Eita. Now, to be honest, both of the memories are actually pretty decent for specific characters. They are not so universal, and therefore, vast majority of the time, you shouldn't be summoning for them. Like, I would definitely say do not summon for them unless you are a massive well. If you are a massive well, though, those two memories are actually going to be very good. For example, this one for Yamagata is actually going to be the best memory for himself because I believe it's one of the few memories which can actually increase reflex stat, which is exactly what Yamagata and also Shiratorizawa school team actually require, okay? So this is one of the few memories actually able to boost that, and that's kind of what's the best memory for himself. However, you should definitely be skipping this if you're free to play because the number you see here is only going to be when you actually max dupe him. If you only have him at 0 dupe, the number will be nowhere near as high, and because it's probability based, you probably wouldn't even notice the effect, okay? This effect is not going to be obvious unless you max dupe it, and that's kind of why this one is going to be an easy skip if you are a light spender or even dolphin. I would say unless you're a massive whale, you should definitely be skipping this. Otherwise, you wouldn't notice the impact too much. Then we move on to the other set of memory that we'll also be getting, the one for Eita. This one's quite obvious. It's just going to be a pinch server memory, or just a surfing memory. Now you may be wondering, I already have a very good surfing memory for Okawa, so what's going to be the difference between the two? The difference is quite simple. Okawa one actually provide a buff for your whole team and increase your whole team's awareness once you actually stack it up, etc. Well, this one just increase awareness for himself, okay? And what that basically means is that if you want a slightly higher chance to guarantee a crit on your surf, this one actually can provide that more than this UR memory for Okawa. However, vast majority of the time, you don't really just want to buff up your own surf, right? You actually want to serve and therefore actually turn that into a buff for the rest of the team. So that's kind of why your Okawa memory is still going to be a better surfing memory than this one, no matter how you look at it. In only very, very niche case, for some reason, you just want to make sure you are 100% guaranteed you want your surf to be absolutely critical, then fine, you can go for a slightly higher number than this, slightly higher awareness buff in this one. But like I said, vast majority of the time, this UR memory is just going to be so much better than this one from Eita Semi-Eta. If you for whatever reason, let's say you have Okawa, or maybe if you actually want to build Asumumiya for a surfing purpose rather than a setting purpose, and you have missed this UR memory from Okawa, then fine, you can use this one as a replacement instead. But honestly speaking, I would just recommend you guys start save up for future. Whenever this banner whenever this memory appears in a re-banner, then just summon it back then, okay? There's no point to try to specifically go after this one. It's very niche purpose. Then let's move on to the main highlight of this banner, I guess, which is going to be the one for Akaashi. Now, this one I already mentioned, right? It's very good because for setter position in particular, vast majority of the time, there are 4 different setters, right? 4 different speciality. And this is the case, that will be the case until we have the JP update where they remove the position limit, and therefore the way you build your team specialty is going to change. But all the way until then, which is going to be at least the next few months, your team specialty is going to be determined by your setter, and sometimes you may actually want to change your setter in order to get an edge over your opponent. However, if you actually take a look at all of the SP or UR memories for setter, you would then realize all of them are very specific to the unit which is actually in the picture. Okay, so for example, for this one, which is the one for SP Akaashi, the last half of this best condition, that's basically the hype mode for Bokuto. So unless you play either version Bokuto, you won't even be able to activate the second half of this memory. Okay, so it's quite bespoke. Same thing for Kenma. You will notice there's a buff here, sticky effect. Yeah, this is only for Kenma himself. Okay, then this one for Sugawaru, this actually require you to consume stamina. Okay, once again, no other setter will be doing that unless it's Sugawaru. Then this one for Asumiya is basically for when your teammates is not actually going for a critical hit. So once again, that really is only going to be for when you build in now retargeting with Asumiya being your setter. So once again, very bespoke for him. Then this one for Kageyama is just for when you have settled down, which once again, vast majority of the time you wouldn't be doing that unless you're playing Kageyama himself. And then this one for Okawa, where it's just for surfing. So as a result, what you realize is that if you actually want to get multiple setters, so that you have one setter for each speciality, so you can actually build up your team for different speciality, you actually kind of need to get the right memory for every single one of them, and that's going to be very expensive, right? Because that's a lot of different UR or SP memories that you need to get, and memory tickets in this game is not easy to obtain. So if you are not going to do that and you don't have the resources to get all those, let's say 4 different UR or SP memories, what can you do? The best option is obviously to use a universal SSR memory so that you can have one single memory to put on no matter which setter is going to be out there. And the best one, in my opinion, is going to be this one for Akaashi. And that's kind of why I do want you guys to actually really consider it. If you are free to play, however, you still want to have multiple different setters from each speciality, okay? Now, what makes this the best SSR setter memory, in my opinion, is it's quite simple. First of all, increase your set stat, which as a setter, that's always going to be helpful, so it's quite universal. Yes, the second half of this ability is only going to be for when your teammate has it's a Bakuto and have that emo mode, etc. But to be honest, like vast majority of the time, you don't really care about second half of the effect because unless your Bokuto is like 6 dupe, you wouldn't be really spamming your attack anyway. So the depressed mode hardly would even influence you. Okay, if you have another second spiker, the depressed mode literally means nothing. So that's kind of why you can ignore the second half completely. Obviously, it's going to be good if you actually do have Bokuto, but even if you do not have Bokuto, you're not really losing out here. Okay, but what makes this really good is, like I said, the first ability. This just increases your set. This is universal, so this is always good. But then what makes it even more better, in my opinion, is also, first of all, this applies, it can give a buff to both your power attack and also quick attack. So once again, it's quite universal from that perspective. But the one that actually makes it stand out the most is actually this part of the ability where it says when the ally activate Team Morale Awakening. So basically, when your team activate Team Morale Awakening, then what's going to happen is that the person spiking is actually going to recover 4 stamina. Now, this is actually really, really massive because stamina in this game, in my opinion, actually counts a lot more than some other stats or buff in other stats. Because to be honest, the damage calculation in this game is not very obvious, and sometimes I think we have all seen examples, to be honest. Like you could be doing like a 5,000 power spike and that get blocked by something which is much lower block, okay? It's just, I'm going to be honest, yes, I'm sure a higher number for your spikes was set. It's going to give you a slightly higher chance of winning that point, etc. But because there's lack of transparency, you don't actually know how much of that is actually going to translate to you. It could be, for example, it's on a sliding scale. So for example, let's say the difference between your spike and also the enemy block is more than a certain amount, then increasing it any further is going to make no impact, okay? I don't know. I don't think anyone will be able to actually test that reliably because it's all RNG based. So as a result, you can have all of the other setters, setter memories, which are increasing all of your other random stats. Yes, I'm sure you make an impact, but exactly how big of an influence that's going to be, no one knows. But this one is quite obvious. You're going to recover stamina, and that is actually going to be quite important from quite a few different perspectives. First of all, in the case where you don't actually have a strong bench, if you run out of stamina, what's going to happen is that your strong team member will be replaced by a much weaker one. As a result, your team power is obviously going to weaken. I think everyone knows the importance of that, all right? It's definitely going to be a lot more tangible than some random numerical stats buff, which no one knows how that will actually influence the impact in the game. And then the other thing is, let's say if you do not actually even put anyone on the bench, which I saw quite a few people do that, yes, your strongest character may stay on the field for a lot longer. However, once your stamina is down to 0, what's going to happen is that he won't be able to use any skills at all, okay? You can still do your normal spikes or your normal blocks, however, you won't be able to actually activate any of your skills. So once again, having the stamina is able to prolong how long you're actually going to be on the field, and therefore you can actually activate all of those skills. That to me is going to be a lot more tangible. I know exactly what impact I'll be making, and those are pretty big impacts, right? Obviously, our first team is going to be a lot stronger than our second team. You're going to have all of the potentials built in, all of the memory, potentially the skills leveled up as well. And as a result, obviously, there's going to be massive impact. And likewise, if I have one character who's capable of using a skill versus another character who's out of stamina and not able to use the skill, once again, I think we all know how big an impact that's going to be making. And that's kind of what to be honest, I just prefer this kind of effect because I at least know what I'll be getting at. And that's kind of what I think is the best set of memory out there. And then if you combine this with my first point, having this one single memory can potentially give you a budget build for all 4 different specialty setup that you'll be getting in the future. That is actually something seriously worth considering, okay? So that's kind of what, definitely do not slip on this memory. If you are already knowing which characters you want to build in the future, simply put that in your source. How many setters are there? Are you planning to get the memory for each one of those setters? If you're not, and you still want a way to have one very good memory for the set position for you to swap around, my honest recommendation is just simply get this one because the effect is quite obvious, it's quite tangible. You know exactly what you'll be getting here, and it's actually going to be universally good on all of the setup. So definitely do not sleep on it, okay? Let me know what you guys think and whether you are planning to summon for any of those memories.